Welcome to Horns Up. I'm Animesh.
And I'm Peter.
And today we are talking to a band that's got the internet and a lot of metalheads in a bit of a tizzy. Yes, it's Blood Incantation. And we have the entire band with us, which is an extremely rare feat for a podcast. Nonetheless, it's great to know that they actually want to come in and chat with us. So, Blood Incantation boys, can you guys quickly just introduce yourselves so that our listeners know who's talking?
No problem. My name is Paul Riedl.
This is Isaac Faulk. I am typically the drummer.
Hey, this is Jeff Barrett. I play fretless bass.
And we've also have Morris, who's the guitarist, with us on the chat. He's just not here right now. You'll eventually hear him on the cast. So, guys, let's get into it. 2019's Hidden History of the Human Race was loved by so many people, right? On Horns Up, it made our Albums of the Year list too. So naturally, everyone's curious. Why is the follow-up, your upcoming release, Timewave Zero, a wholly ambient record? Can you just talk us through the intention behind the release first? Let's set that straight.
Since the beginning, our band has been really interested in cosmic, atmospheric, experimental, electronic, or progressive music, specifically from the 70s, be it prog rock or krautrock or new age or ambient or whatnot. And when we started the band, we were always intending to have that be one of the aspects of our total sound. And with each of our records, starting from our demo, we've increased those elements deliberately with the intention of eventually eschewing them completely just for the one release. You know, it's not like we're not a instrumental band now. We just wanted to do it for this one release to give people, you know, when we have these little mellow atmospheric passages on our records, people a lot of times are like, that's cool because it takes me into a particular headspace or, you know, a cosmic state of consciousness or whatnot. And we just wanted to give people and ourselves as fans and listeners of the band a long form environment for that type of atmosphere so they could really explore the more cinematic and ethereal side of our music, which we consider to be an integral part of the total sound of Blood Incantation.
And from what I've read in interviews, etc., this was something that was planned a long time back. It's not as if you guys suddenly thought, hey, we're going to be following up Hidden with this ambient record. This was something that was in the works much before that itself, right? And something that you'd shared and declared to the world.
That's correct. We like to kind of be transparent about that stuff. And during the promotional cycle for Hidden History, Isaac and I did probably 100 some odd interviews between the two of us, and the majority of them mentioned that our next record would be a palate cleanser for us as well as the fans. So
are you guys surprised with the kind of reaction this record is getting at the moment, Timewave Zero?
People are really pretty excited. We've done several interviews for it already, and people are really excited about the merch, selling lots of tickets to the release show where we're going to perform it in its entirety here in Denver live. And, the pre-orders have been tremendous, actually more so than for Hidden History, probably simply because that expanded our view with people so much, you know, and a lot of people already are very excited. And it's great because no one's heard it yet. There's no streaming. It's doing a little bit of an old school approach where, you know, most times there's a debut single, and then a follow-up single, and then there's full album stream, all that stuff. And we've been really lucky so far that it has had a lid on it still, and everyone's playing fair behind the scenes with it, and that people are really excited. You know, like I said, we've sold more pre-orders for this one than we did for the last one, so I think it's going to be pretty tremendous.
It's interesting you say that, because for this nature of a record, can you really do like a single release?
Yeah, we intentionally made it so that there was no single that was released, and we talked we talked about this with the record label to make sure that the album experience was kind of retained when the album is actually finally out. People can listen to it in full, and that there wasn't like, you know, I mean, plus like it wouldn't really make sense to chop out like a 3-minute section and release that. So since each side is about 20 minutes and those are entire tracks that that really depend on their own time, then it didn't make sense to do that. So
you know what? Honestly, since we just got a streaming copy of the album, right, in terms of previews, one of the things which totally made sense was you talking about it being consumed live, because I've been listening to you guys for a while, right? And unlike your previous releases, at this point, just listening to it streaming on the web while on my phone, on my laptop or my phone, I just felt zero involvement with it, right? Like it was just kind of playing in the background while I was going around my daily routine. But I can totally get like being in a live setting and just being like zoned into that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like super honest here. The news that this was a wholly ambient record didn't really surprise me because you'd already shared it, right? And in fact, the ambient bits on Starspawn as well as on Hidden History were the bits that truly made you guys unique for me in the first place. So I was kind of looking forward to an entire album or just an entire collection of music, with only this as the focus. Having said that, like Peter, I also largely ended up using Timewave Zero as background music while I was working, and weirdly, I've been using it as music to wake up to.
Honestly, that's perfectly fine. The definition of ambient music, as coined by Brian Eno in the 70s, was specifically it needs to be as equally listenable as it is ignorable, and you put it on as a contributor to your environment, and furniture music or background music, muzak, elevator music. These things are just supposed to cultivate an environment of the building that they're played in. So when you're listening to it and it's in the background, that's totally normal. And then other times, like if you were to go with headphones and really focus, there's a lot of details to keep you immersed. So it works on both approaches. We got Morris here coming in now.
Hey, Morris. Okay. The question we really have is, are you guys okay with how people end up using your music?
Yeah.
Or do you guys have like a vision of what you want your music to be used as? Or what you intend for your music to be used as?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I suppose the interpretation of any art really is in the eye of the beholder. So it's hard to say. I mean,
we just make it because we like it. And if people are down, that's awesome. But, it's okay if they don't like it. If it's not engaging enough for them, that's no problem with us. The next record will be even crazier than Hidden History and Timewave combined. So people will have some stimulus coming down the pipeline sooner or later.
That, in fact, is a perfect segue to the next talking point that we had, which was a recent interview you did where which said that the band exists purely for its own interests. And I completely respect that, because that's exactly the way I look at the music projects that I'm involved in as well. It's purely for me.
I honestly don't know why that's an unusual position to have as an artist in life.
It's not. I totally get it. But the thing is, when you have fans, right? And when you have people out there who want to come in and listen to you, and looking at it from a different perspective, in some manner, the business side of music, etc., sure, there will be diehard fans who will believe that Timewave is the best record from the band. There'll be others who would rather have Timewave as an accompaniment listen or a side B of sorts to what you would largely call a riff-filled metal album. Again, the larger question being, does it really matter how the music you've released is received? Isaac.
So, it's important to also know that, this is presented as an EP, and that was also because of the business side. I mean, the record label asked, okay, well, let's present this as an EP, even though it is by time, the length of the album, it's longer. But it is a different, we're aware it's a different, avenue of the band. That being said, after we were told that, and then we gave them the actual recordings, Century Media was actually like, wow, this is really good. Maybe this should be an actual album. And we're like, well, this is already, how it's been talked about. So let's keep it that way, because it does make sense. And for us, following up Hidden History right away with another metal record, it just didn't really make sense at the time. And so it really made more sense for us to take that time, something that we've we've said, something that we've already planned on doing, to like, you know, set like a new kind of groundwork for what we can do next, which is we can really do whatever we want. You know, we can set that precedent saying that Blood Incantation is not just a death metal band.
But we still love brutal metal, and the next record will be a crazy fusion of those two things. You know, our records, each one, starting from the demo, which was recorded in 2013, moving on, each one expands this landscape that we are trying to create with this like sonic environment that when you hear it, you're like, that's a Blood Incantation vibe. You know, like not even the riffs themselves, but the atmosphere of the production and the recordings and the song structure and all that stuff. And so getting more progressive, more extreme, more technical, more brutal, but also more ambient and more experimental. That's been part of the game that we've been doing the whole time. And so, like Isaac said, now that we have this, we have the most extreme, brutal version of Hidden History, and we have the most progressive and experimental of Timewave. Those are those two pillars we can stand upon now, like a checkerboard. And we can now construct a completely unique environment where it's no longer just a band playing death metal for the sake of death metal, which, to be honest, Blood Incantation has not really ever been that band. But now we have the freedom to combine them as we like. And so just like, you know, we were trying to tell people that Hidden History was going to be simultaneously more brutal and more atmospheric than Starspawn, and people then were like, no way. And so I'm sure they'll say that about our next record, but at the same time, when we just make it for ourselves when it comes out and we've, you know, put it all together behind the scenes, we're satisfied with it by the time it comes out. And so it's cool when people enjoy it and when they get the concept. And obviously there's always going to be people who don't vibe with it, and that's totally fine with us. But the next one, just like we did with Hidden History and just how Starspawn expanded on the demo, Interdimensional Extinction, we just want to keep pushing the band's concept and the sound out further into outer space and inner space.
That being said, as far as like how people enjoy it or perceive it, I guess in a sense, we put a lot of effort into presenting these ideas that are beyond music, beyond just like the day-to-day life, you know, just like philosophy and concepts about what all of this is. So a person that can sit down with one of our records and read the lyrics that Paul wrote and the ideas we present, the book list and Hidden History, that I do think that is important and a pretty big way of enjoying the music as well. So I guess it is hard to say how someone should enjoy something and whether or not I care, but it does mean something more when a person gets the full picture and really immerses themselves in what it is we're trying to create.
When you put it in that perspective, right? You guys are like a metal nerd's delight, right? Because it's so much more.
Yeah.
You're going to like keep going in. I mean, I still remember Animation. I keep talking about like the first thing we'd always do is like open the booklet, but like in addition to reading the lyrics, also check the pictures of the t-shirts the band members were wearing.
Oh yeah,
that's
how I found out about half the bands I like growing up. You know, you buy a record and you're like, what shirt is that? Who's on the thanks list? Or there's a collage of show flyers. What band is that they played a show with? You know, so there's a lot of little Easter eggs in our layouts, whether it's like references in the lyrics or the solo titles themselves being a book title or some strange obscure reference. And you know, we just enjoy records that take the time to put a little bit of extra stuff in there for you. And so, you know, all of our records have posters and over the top packaging, and actually except for Timewave, which is another part of the concept because it's more restrained and allows, you know, everything in BI is kind of more is more, and Timewave is like the less is more version, the yin and the yang version, where it's not overbearing stimulus and all these crazy esoteric references and all this stuff. It's just an open space for the listener to take a journey with the music and their own visual accompaniment, their own mental perspective on it. And the next one, I'm sure, will be even more insane than Hidden History as far as the presentation and packaging and all that.
Now that you say it, right, it makes sense why the song titles are what they are on Timewave. So I just kind of wanted to understand more, because if
super
I'm reading
minimal, super restrained, let people be like, because we have really crazy song titles sometimes,
exactly.
and they're really descriptive, and so we're really, like Morris said, hammering down this particular approach and this aesthetic and mental area that we want people to be in as they're going in. So when you do read the lyrics and you look at the pictures and stuff, you kind of get that visual impression right up front. But with Timewave, we take that away, not to be like primitive about it, but to open it up and to expand the listener themselves this opportunity to experience that type of environment and that music.
All right. So just to get a sense, if I'm reading it correctly, right? I mean, the EP is 2 songs divided into 4 movements each. Is that correct?
The digital streaming version of it is divided each into 4 movements. Yes, and that is for a very old business practice called mechanical royalties. And in the past, we, for instance, with Awakening on Hidden History, it's a 18-minute song, and it's not broken up. And they really insisted that we ought to do that for the mechanical royalties for the streaming stuff. But for this new one, we conceded that, okay, well, basically the way the music industry was made, they have all these really old laws from before things like digital technology existed, and they just carry them forward. So basically you get paid more for a 10-song album that is 10 minutes long than you did for a 1-song album that is 20 minutes long. So it's not actually about the quantity of the music itself. It's just about how these streaming tracks are broken up. And with Hidden History, we ate it and we're like, nope, this is our art. This is how we're going to do it. But for the new one, we split them up into little equal spots so that if you wanted to license it for a film work or a video game sample or something like that, it's easier for you to be like, I want IO third movement, I want a first movement or whatever. But also for, not everyone wants the super deep droney parts. They don't want to have to get to the rewarding part later of like when you sit through a track like IO and it finally opens up later. Not everyone has the time or patience to enjoy that, and they just want to hear this nice part, or like the B-side in particular is the most active. And, they maybe just want to skip to that part, and that's fine on the streaming, and for the CD and the vinyl, they play uninterrupted for the 20 minutes. So you get both.
There's something interesting you said there, which was if somebody was to license this for, say, a cinema project or a game or something of that sort as a score, is that a space that you guys are looking into? Is that something that you guys want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to score, and we do see ourselves scoring some future video games or cinema projects.
Just like Tangerine Dream or Klaus Schultz or these guys in the 70s, Pink Floyd made 2 soundtracks in between Metal and Dark Side, for More and Obscured by Clouds. And we just want to be a band that can do that, but we also play brutal music as well. So
I love the shout out to Tangerine Dream, because I never thought I'd actually on Horns Up even get that name mentioned. Peter and listeners, just FYI, Tangerine Dream, especially to those in India, you'll recognize them because they are the ones who created the lovely Street Hawk theme. Street Hawk, the bike show that's like whatever, the bike counterpart to David Hasselhoff's Knight Rider, which was huge in India. It became huge in India because that's one of the only syndicated shows that played on public access television here in India as such.
Crazy.
Fascinating. Good to know.
Dropping a little bit of trivia over there. But so I want to continue this chat about scoring and using or basically lending or creating music for a particular project, which is not your project. You're just brought in to maybe one particular part of it, but you're working under the brief or under the guidance of a director who's sitting above you as such, right? Do you think people will come to you for blood incantation music, or do you think they'll just come to you as musicians and you guys will be basically creating something which may not even be blood incantation?
I mean, that's definitely ultimately the hope is that, much like a band like Ulver or Sun, or a lot of these other projects that kind of transcend into the art world. And, Ulver did multiple soundtracks for films as well. And, going back to what you were talking about with Tangerine Dream, that's kind of where they became a household name, because they started doing all these soundtracks for films. And so that is something that we definitely could see Blood Incantation and just ourselves doing. If it's Blood Incantation with under that name, I think it does make it a more interesting development for the band. But we're always interested in doing things outside of the box like that.
If it was to be a Blood Incantation soundtrack for a project, it would be very important that it retains the atmosphere of the cosmic essence that the band Blood Incantation represents. Timewave does that. But if a project came to us that was like, I need something totally different, maybe something that's really positive and maybe something that's more beat oriented, unlike the Timewave Zero material, we would have to temper that with what the concept of the film was. Because like Isaac said, we could do something that was, Riedl, Kolontyrsky, Barrett, Faulk, or whoever, we could, I don't think we would make a new name for the same guys in a different band, but, we would operate as individual artists as a group. And we would also do it as Blood Incantation, because part of the reason that, like Isaac said, for the Tangerine Dream thing, most of their records before they started doing their soundtracks in the mid to late 70s, they were just obscure kind of oddities from Germany in their late 60s, early 70s. And what really pushed them was these crazy kind of atypical soundtracks that retained this Tangerine Dream essence, but freed from the initial restraint of, like, let's say, a krautrock or progressive electronic tag, and it would just depend really on project per project, so on a one-to-one basis, we would cross that bridge as we came to it.
Okay, this is one burning question I had the moment I knew I was going to talk to you guys. I didn't realize it would be all four of you. So I'd love to hear from all four of you on this. Now, cosmic and outer space, that's a word that keeps springing up, right, in the conversation. And like, it's all over your artwork, your lyrics and stuff like that. So I have to know, what's it about outer space and the cosmic that really fascinates you guys so much?
Honestly, at least for me personally, that's just a part of my personality. I've always been interested and exposed to, whether it's, Carl Sagan type stuff with Cosmos, or Nova on public access here in the States back in the 80s and 90s, and, new age atmospheric stuff like NPR's Echoes with John Giliberto and things like that. That was the music I was raised around and grown up with. And my dad had a lot of philosophy and astronomical types of books, a lot of Stephen Jay Gould and Carl Sagan type of stuff. And, paleontology, anthropology, ancient history, mystical, esoteric philosophy, these things are all kind of related, at least to me. And in these ancient civilizations that we kind of venerate with our aesthetic and implied concepts, that it was a everyday part of their life that, as above, so below, as within, so without, these types of polarities. And at least for me, it's just nature, like, we're out here on Earth, man. Earth's a planet, Earth's in space. Every person listening to this right now is on a rock hurtling through space. They've lived their entire lives on the Earth ship. You know what I mean? They're in space. Everyone's trying to get out there, but at the same time, these old esoteric and metaphysical traditions, they say that there's another way to get to outer space, which is through inner space. And that's where the philosophy and the mysticism comes in. And this synthesis of these two, this ancient and futuristic, or this east meets west, this type of synthesis is what Blood Incantation is all about. So it's not just a synthesis between old school death metal and futuristic death metal. It's a synthesis between ancient mysticism and futuristic, psychedelic, whatever. It's that kind of hovering between the two that, at least for me, I think is so interesting. And when I met these guys, we all have that in common. We all were relative psychonauts and explorers of altered states of consciousness and mysticism in our own right. And then when we all met up, it was kind of like, okay, now we can really make this band, In
a more literal sense, I remember as a kid, my parents took me to a planetarium. I was super young. And the classic info about how the sun is going to eat the earth one day, I remember hearing that and seeing this in this planetarium, and it scared the shit out of me, man. I was horrified. The rest of the day, it had this like profound effect on me of like, what is life if the sun is just going to destroy this planet? And ever since that day, I've just, been interested in space and the cosmos. And my dad had a close friend, my godfather, essentially, who was always stargazing, had a telescope, and we drive upstate New York every summer to go look at the amazing night sky. And like, yeah, there's just profound effect on me knowing like that one day this will all end. But
also knowing that we are so small, there's a whole world out there that we're just a small little part of, and that everyone is sharing in this great universal experience. And that type of stuff is just, space is the place, man. It's awesome.
Jeff and Isaac, you want to weigh in too?
Like Paul was saying, humanity has been obsessed with the cosmos for our entire existence as a species. Going back to ancient civilizations, kind of the way that I talk about it a lot of times is that we have to remember too that, thousands of years ago, without television, without radio, without any of these things, what did people have time to do? And people used their time looking at the sky. And humans based our lives and our culture around where the stars were. We based, just when you're gonna, put the seed in the ground, and when you're going to, reap your crop at the end. And those were all things that were based around the stars and the positions of the sky. And, to that point, places like Stonehenge and stuff like that, they were like these big astronomical clocks, And so it's to me, it's like, we exist in the cosmos. So to not be interested in it seems almost weirder to me than being really interested in it. And, going to that point, it's just, for us, it's just something that made sense with the band, because there were a lot of bands before us that kind of did that sort of thing, but we wanted to kind of do it in our own way and kind of go back to that idea of like, why are people so obsessed with the cosmos for thousands of years? And also just the accuracy of certain cultures having knowledge about these celestial bodies and stuff like that. And that really interested both Paul and I when we first met. And that was something that really drove our creative force, because it's important also as a band to figure out what your music is trying to portray before you even write it. I feel like a lot of bands, and even I've been in bands like this, where it's just like you write songs and then you kind of come up with the lyrics afterwards, and then and there's nothing wrong with that. But from the get-go, Blood Incantation kind of had this intention of just being like, okay, let's kind of put this all together, all these things that we're interested in, and let's make the music sound like that. So that was important.
That's the hardest part, is making that cosmic atmosphere translate into stuff like brutal death metal, technical, progressive, experimental death metal. And it's another reason, getting back to Timewave Zero, why in the beginning it was a necessity that at some point we had to do the cosmic, the most cosmic death metal band has to do a cosmic record, and the atmospheres on Timewave, they can take you to outer space if you're not careful. Everything's tuned to 432 hertz, which is apparently the standard for classical music instrument tuning for hundreds of years, up until the 1940s. And so things like, Jeff plays a tambura, and we have gongs and singing bowls and stuff on the records. And these types of like ancestral memories, like this primordial urge to experience the transcendental, they can be triggered by sound and by frequencies. And things like those instruments in particular are really effective at getting a trance-like kind of state in people's minds. Sometimes you just hear it and then you get goosebumps and you're like, oh, that's that ancient shit that we're all about, So we just wanted to try to consolidate all of those things into one package for people, whether it's death metal or experimental. Because we use the tambura on Hidden History too, and the singing bowls on the demos and Starspawn. So it's always like, there's no actual instrument on Timewave Zero that was not previously recorded and released on a Blood Incantation record.
I had two thoughts while hearing you guys and hearing you guys talk so passionately about what you want the music of Blood Incantation to kind of represent. The foremost being, has it at any point in time been a concern that you guys will be pigeonholed as the cosmic metal band?
That doesn't bother me. We just want to be free, man. We're artists.
It's just inevitable that your band is going to be categorized in a certain way. But I mean, obviously, like, that's kind of what we were doing in the first place. I mean, it was important for us to pigeonhole ourselves in a way, just to set a parameter.
We came out of the pigeonhole
that we work in. I mean, Blood Incantation is a specific thing. So
okay, I love that. I love the focus, which then leads me to the next question. When you have such a chiseled focus, you'll ultimately end up, and this is just because of how artists work, right? Like, once you know what the target is, you know that you will eventually meet your target at some point in time. To you guys, it may be the best album you ever create or something of that sort, right? The one that absolutely nails what you're going for. Is that something that you guys are working towards?
Hopefully the next one. We talk all the time at practice about how we don't think we've reached our final form yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I like you were saying, I mean, we have a directive, but I don't think that there is a specific target. I think, more so it's like if we're working on something and we know in that moment that that's the right thing and that's Blood Incantation, that's the target. But there's no like ultimate album, like, I mean, me as an artist too, it's like, I honestly, like, no matter what I've done, even if it's like the best thing I've done so far, I always have something that I want to do better, and there's always going to be a higher benchmark. And I don't know that I'll ever achieve that personally. Like, I feel like every single time I make something, it needs to be better next time. And so, that's what drives us, and definitely me as an artist, is just trying to push yourself further and further, until you die.
I think that's a great problem to have personally.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Rather than the ultimate Blood Incantation record, the target more is to free ourselves from the launching platform that we came from and be able to exist as free, independent artists in our own creative way. And that's honestly even harder than making a perfect record. Okay,
so having said that, what has constructing this particular EP as such, or album, however you want to call it, taught you or helped you realize about yourselves?
Well, we had to kind of relearn how to play together because, well, for me personally, I haven't jammed with synthesizers with other people, let alone played synthesizers for that long, so it's a lot of patience, time, understanding, but also it reinforced our connection as musicians, because without words, without having to, sit there and be like, okay, this riff, this drum pattern, we kind of understood that we can communicate in a different language as well.
And for myself, I've been making synth music for almost 15 years, but I've never played with other people where it becomes you have to write and arrange and play counterpoint harmonies and do an actual compositional approach. All my stuff, I would just be improvising and noodling and just kind of winging it, which I'm sure plenty of people might assume that Timewave is going to be like. But one of the things that I think we're most proud of is that the arrangement and the composition of it, like Morris said, we grew as metal players, even by playing non-metal music together, because without the kind of safety net of like a consistent drum beat or a riff however many times, like it's a lot more nebulous, and you have to focus just as hard to play in key, in time, make sure that everyone's counterpoint melody is allowing room for other melodies to come through. Things come, things go. Sometimes everybody's playing with both hands. Sometimes one person is playing an acoustic instrument and only one other person is playing a drone note, so it ebbs and it flows. And we don't really get that opportunity in death metal because it's so aggressive by nature that it really needs to be kind of firing on all cylinders all the time. That said, we do draw it back for the atmospheric passages within the death metal. And that's like, we appreciate you saying that kind of helps us stick out, because that's what we're going for. But for the new one, we improvise. I mean, we improvise with death metal a lot. We actually made songs like Inner Path to Outer Space and Hovering Lifeless through improvisation as a group playing metal. And we'll jam all the time just for fun. And sometimes there's good riffs. Sometimes that's how you got to get the bad riffs out because you're just messing around. But when we played all of 2020, since we weren't on tour, we were improvising together, and we didn't start writing the music until last year. And we took some ideas that we had, because we were in our practice space. We got a new practice space right before the pandemic. And so we can now record our jams. We can record the synthesizers. We can record with room mics. And we would listen back to them and be like, oh, well, that was okay, or that was interesting, and we can maybe borrow that for later. And so we would kind of draw from these, dozens, probably like 50 hours of pure improvised music. And at one point in 2020, we were just doing it with like a phone recording in the middle of the room, and we were all playing out of the guitar amps. And that sounds pretty crazy when you listen to all that sound condensed into a tiny little microphone. Plus, guitar amps aren't designed for analog synthesizers, so that there's a different type of tonality. But once we started the actual writing process, we got individual mixers, we got a interface and all that stuff, so we can go direct into the computer. Everybody can have control over their sound. And that really, like, after a year of improvising, it was like opening up a blossom of creativity in that environment when we were able to sit there, each person in control of their own stuff. We'd gotten, more comfortable playing our own gear, but also with each other, like Morris said, relearning how to communicate in a different context. And once we started writing Timewave, it really was, just for me, probably the most stimulating creative artistic experience I'd had in years, man. Not to discredit any of my other records because I love them, but it was just so different. It was so free, and you don't get that type of experimental freedom when you're playing stuff that has like a finite number of frets and a certain type of beat and whatnot. And so we really, I hope I speak for all of us, and that we're all proud of that, and that we grew as musicians individually, but especially, like Morris said, like we became stronger as Blood Incantation by doing that, which will translate directly into the metal music that we make.
Jeff, what about you? What did Timewave Zero teach you?
The main thing was, like the other guys were saying, how to communicate non-verbally through our music on another level. I mean, we have done that for years in our practice space with our traditional instruments, but approaching it with all this new gear did open up a whole new avenue of creativity. And it was cool to just jam. And we have some other songs that we're pretty proud of that we aren't going to put out as Blood Incantation. So hopefully one day we will be able to release those, maybe under a different moniker or something. I don't know, but I don't know, opening up, being vulnerable.
Cool. You mentioned that Jeff played the Tanpura here, so I have to ask, the album release gig, are you playing the Tanpura there too?
Yeah, actually I did just get acoustic pickup for it, so I have been playing it at our practices as of recently, which I was an overdub for the album, and prior to the recording the album, we never heard the two together, like the synths and the tambura. So being able to get that acoustic sound through delay and reverb has really changed the jam space sound. It's really unique. It's awesome. So yeah, the release show, we will have that. And our opener is a Indian classical guitarist who lives here in Denver.
Yeah, Roshan Bhartia.
And he will be opening the show with a few ragas. It's going to be a great
awesome
experience.
Wow, that sounds like something definitely we would enjoy seeing, and like once in a kind of unique situation, right? So, which brings me to my next question, which are what's your plans for the next gigs? I mean, your calendars are filling up. How many of them actually are metal gigs? And what can attendees at those gigs expect to hear? Because now you've got like a wider variety of sound, right? You've got like the ambient stuff, you've got like the metal stuff. What can they expect from that?
Now, all of our tours are basically touring for Hidden History, because we did not really get the opportunity because of the pandemic to do our world tour and bring that album to people. You know, we toured Starspawn for 3 years all over the world, and something like 11 or 13 tours just for that one 5-song record and then some demo songs. And even though people would say, when's the new one, that we would go to the shows and they couldn't get enough of the old one. So we would still want to give people the chance to experience, even though it's now 2019 to 22, it's still our last record. And we've only done just this one tour in December, which was like kind of a spur of the moment, brief excursion. And we were so excited to bring Hidden History to the world, man. And we're better players. The music is more interesting for us to play. But for now, the only ambient stuff is going to be at the release show, and then for curated events, which are like a special event, one-off type of thing at exclusive locations, whether it's a planetarium or a outdoor amphitheater or an old opera house or something kind of special like a museum or some art gallery thing. But if you're going to go see a Blood Incantation show, you will know if it's going to be ambient or death metal in advance. We do like to mess with people, but we would never do that. That's crazy. But we have several tours lined up for Hidden History, and we'll play old songs too. But we still just really wanted to bring that record to people, and we didn't really get that chance. So we're still kind of looking forward to that opportunity, even though the calendar years have continued.
All right. So as we begin to wind down, I have to ask, since you guys don't buy music from Target, where do you get your music from?
There's a lot of great record stores in Denver, actually. We do a lot of stuff, a lot of those old 70s things you can get really lucky and find in a record store. But nowadays, like the last probably 15 years of internet, like vinyl culture and resale, it's really expanded. Like, because there was a time when, Discogs and eBay were really underutilized. And now it's like every record store, a brick and mortar, also sells online, because that's just a necessity in a new climate. You have to do that, because certain people, for instance, if you're looking for really niche stuff, you get lucky sometimes at a shop, but most of the time you got to seek it out and find it online. Sometimes you can go to a specialty shop which caters to that type of stuff, which is great. But I've been buying records for 20 years now, and most of mine, when I started, I bought through mail orders, and I would like write to a distro list and send a money order, and you have to list alternates.
Yeah, here's the thing: music is a diverse thing, and there are many places to go to find whatever music you like. And it's important that every avenue, I think it's beautiful that there's so many different avenues that people can discover music. So, we're all avid fans of all kinds of music. So
it certainly shows. So then, what's been your latest purchase, and what are you guys currently listening to? Let's just go around the room and get those out.
My latest purchase is right here. I haven't heard it yet, but I'll show it to you. Maybe you guys have heard it. It was a blind buy, and I was like, this looks cool.
Okay, so while Paul goes and fetches the record, Morris, what about you?
I'm trying to recall. I mean, the other day I bought Isaac was gracious enough to tell me that Von Records had copies of Dawn's Slaughter Son repressed, which I've been looking for a long time. But the last thing I bought in person, I went to Twist and Shout Records with Paul. I got this great record from a guy named Tim Story called Threads. And it's just this wonderful piece of ambient electronic music that takes you on, many different types of melancholy journeys, some more active, some more sparse. And it's the hype sticker on it's really what got me for fans of like Brian Eno, Tangerine Dream, etc. Everything we've mentioned. But yeah, Tim Story, Threads. Excellent album.
Okay, what about you, Jeff?
Our latest purchase was probably some 70s or 80s Japanese city pop.
Wow. Okay.
Interesting. Isaac?
Yeah, I think, let's see, my last purchase, I got this record by Hiroshima Yoshimura. called Pier and Loft, which great Japanese ambient. And I also got the repress of Cythereal's Nord, classic Swedish black metal band. That was probably their best record. So they finally re-released that with the original art. So I got that.
Okay. And Paul, now that you found the record?
Can't vouch for this yet, but it's Peter Backhausen, Planet Show on Sky Records, 1979. Big celestial stuff on the back. I like to collect things from Sky Records. They're like a new age prog krautrock label from Germany in the 70s. But I just saw that. I was like, Planet Show, huh? Sky Records 79, sign me up. It's only $10. Hopefully it's cool.
Yeah, that sounds like a good deal.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good note as such to end this chat on. Peter, what was your last purchase, man?
Oh man. Let me see. This is a band that Animesh, or at least this is a album.
Holy fuck, you got that. I'm proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the new that's the Devin Townsend acoustic album, right?
Yeah. And the only reason I got it is because Animesh and I actually were 2 of 50 people that watched him perform this set, but in Mumbai.
Bombay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great story behind that. And every time I kind of listened to this on Spotify, it took me back to that time. So I was like, you know what? I need to have it on CD.
That's awesome.
Round it up, Animesh.
This is not going to be like, it's my last purchase only because I haven't bought a lot of physical stuff recently. So my last purchase was Cynic's Ascension Codes, which I don't know if you guys have heard, but I really like, both of us really tripped out on it. And if you guys haven't heard it, I think you guys will really enjoy it.
Yeah, we're fans.
That'll be an interesting collaboration, right? Paul Masvidal with Blood Incantation.
We've talked about this many times.
Wow.
Yeah, we like Cynic, so
No surprise.
Even though we were thinking in our brains.
Trust me, we want that.
So
that is an ultimate goal, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan too. Well, yeah. That's the music that we've been listening to. That's the music that Blood Incantation's been listening to. Why don't you let us know what music you've been listening to? We are at hornsupod.com and on Twitter at hornsupod. As always, I'm at Asmani on Twitter.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
And this was Horns Up.
Horns up, everyone.